Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hello and welcome. I'm Mark Angelides for Liberty Nation TV. And today I'm joined by Scott D. Cosenza on this momentous second anniversary of LibertyNation.com. It also happens to be the second anniversary of President Trump's presidency. So to discuss the man, to weigh and measure his actions so far, Scott, welcome.
Cheers, Mark.
So let's start off, Scott. Can you give me a brief overview, and almost a state of the union, because his might not happen, based on the last 2 years of the Trump presidency?
I think it's been an anti-establishment presidency. And in fact, one of the reasons why it may not happen is because of the constant bucking of that anti-establishment energy that Donald Trump has brought to Washington. And that, to me, is what the big takeaway is if I look at the last 2 years.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest win for the Trump administration so far?
Mark, I think the biggest win is probably the massive level of deregulation that's happened in the United States. It's sort of been a quiet victory, I think. But so many of our aspects of our daily lives and business and otherwise are governed not by federal law, but the Code of Federal Regulations, which has grown and grown and grown until the Trump administration. We've actually seen some significant reduction in that regard.
Okay. I think many people would agree with you on that one. But now, what would you say is the biggest disappointment, either to the nation as a whole or to his to Trump's base?
Well, I think that the biggest disappointment so far is the bump stock ban. And that may be a bit of a niche item. And you may say, well, do many people even know or care about that? Well, the bump stock ban, I think, is his worst move ever as president, because what it says is that President Trump feels comfortable with with sort of signing his pen to create hundreds or thousands of felons who've done nothing wrong, and in fact relied on previous government advice that what they were doing was legal. And so that, I think, represents the lowest point so far of the administration.
Yeah, and of course, something many people fail to realize is that there are companies that employ people that produce bump stocks. So that's a bit of a
Absolutely. Losing one's job is big enough. I think that is terrible, but I actually feel worse for the people. You know, you think about some guy who's fighting in Afghanistan right now for the U.S. military and has a bump stock in storage and doesn't even know that he's a felon when the day he gets home and takes repossession of his property. It's quite fantastic, I think, that the president has proceeded in this way, and that's why I think it is his worst moment.
Okay. So obviously he's had two Supreme Court justices appointed in his 2 years. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, has gone AWOL at the moment. She's apparently working from home, so still involved in the active process of the Supreme Court. But moving forward into this third year for President Trump, do you think he will get around to appointing a third? Do you think either Ginsburg or another justice will be stepping aside in his third year?
Mark, just to clear the record, I think she is not AWOL because she has official leave. Her convalescence from her cancer surgery, and I have investigated and written about this for LibertyNation.com. It does seem that the recent surgery was successful, and her body is not with that disease anymore. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is one of the most ideologically hardline committed justices we have had on the court. So I think it's important to remember and always state this is a person who thought that Barack Obama and the Democrat-controlled Senate would not be able to get through a justice that she thought was sufficiently liberal enough to replace her, which is why she did not resign during the Obama administration. So unless that her health is so poor that she just thinks that she can't carry on for a moment longer, I don't expect her to resign. And the others on the court, I haven't seen anything that would lead me to think that the next 2 years will see such a resignation.
Okay. So looking forward, what do you think the Trump administration is going to be focusing on for this third year?
Sadly, Mark, with the Democrat majority in Congress and their commitment to so many of them, their commitment to impeachment proceedings, I think that is going to be the entirety of what we see going forward. And I think that any achievement that the administration have will not be legislative. So perhaps more deregulation. There could be work done there that doesn't require the cooperation of Congress or the courts. But in any case, I don't see anything getting done that does require that level of cooperation, because the sides are sort of intransient, or they're sort of, the sides have intractable positions now, which is of non-cooperation, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with the Syria troop withdrawal, and of course that there's echoes going around today that there's a North Korean delegate has come to meet Pompeo to discuss further meetings between the president and Kim Jong-un. So that should be interesting to look at. But it does bring me
Mark, that's exactly the kind of anti-establishment thing that I think is great about the Trump administration. We've seen a lot of movement on Korea, and this withdrawal, this ending a war instead of elevating and escalating a war, I think is welcome change for U.S. foreign policy that Trump brings to the scene.
Yeah, it's also exposing the myth of the anti-war Democrats. We have a piece on that on libertynation.com. Check that. It's very interesting stuff. So that brings me quite nicely onto my next question regarding, as you say, there'll be a lot of hostile forces pushing against each other and very little legislative stuff going through. But this all comes down to the Robert Mueller report. And based on the DC rumor mill, which I'm very loath to listen to at the best of times, it seems to be going nowhere. So do you think when it's finally released, if it does in fact come out this year, will it be a grand reveal or full disclosure, as the ufologists like to say, or will it be quietly swept away?
Oh, I don't think it will be quietly swept away. News broke this week that more leaks from the FBI and Mueller about Cohen being told to lie to Congress at the behest of the president. So it's gone on this long, and I think that there's the longer it goes and the more these leaks come out, the more likely I think there's going to be some fire behind all that smoke.
Okay, I mean that is a question well worth addressing. With is the purpose of the leaks to fan the flames to make the most fire, or is it to create as much damage as possible when they release a damp squib?
Yeah, I appreciate that question very much. It's an interesting question. What happens in the FBI at the very highest levels is a mystery, and what we know about it, though, from the release of the stroke page messages, is that it's quite troubling, and it does give zero confidence, I think, for anybody who just wants the actual facts of, were the malactors both in the Trump campaign, up to and including perhaps Trump himself, or in the FBI, or some combination thereof. I, like most Americans, are eager for an answer, and hopefully the Mueller report will shed some light on that. I don't know that I'm hopeful that it will, but hopefully it will. We need an answer.
We do. And last question, Scott, is there anything that you'd like to put forward regarding the previous 2 years administration or going forward? Final thoughts.
Well, I'll return to my original thought about the anti-establishment moves of the Trump administration. I think that that is what will save the republic, quite frankly. The sort of constant buildup of more and more government in people's lives, more wars, more colonial exercises are what leads to downfalls of great nations. And to the extent that we continue with those policies, that I think will be our downfall as well. So I think it's a welcome change, in spite of all his shortcomings, for Donald Trump to start to turn that ship around.
All right, Scott, thank you ever so much for joining us. And thank you at home for watching. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, libertynation.com. Make sure to visit the site, check out all our new articles, our weighing and measuring of President Donald Trump, and a whole lot more. Take care of yourselves.